Everyone, it's my privilege as Chairman Training Committee to welcome office bearers, Board of Directors, chairpersons of various committees, and dear viewers. I warmly welcome you all to IP's webinar series, session 17. Friends, for a smoother session, please go through the webinar guidelines. Your microphone and video has been switched off for the convenience of viewers. May I request everyone not to switch on their videos or microphone as it is disturbing the session. And in case we find videos or audios on for any of the guests, we'll have no option but to put you into the waiting hall. Thank you. Requested to rename after joining as per the format. In case of queries, please drop a text at the bottom chat window. The webinar is being recorded for the benefit of our members. Q&A session will be in the end. Please type your questions in the chat window. We shall try to address your questions. Friends, let's have a look at the past webinars. So far, we have done 16 webinars on various topics with speakers who have delivered the best possible they could give in on various subjects. And I'm sure if we compile in all the data, we might have a total grant sort of a thing for amusement industry, which will elaborate almost everything which we need in our routine life for running up the parks. Friends, today's session, we have with us Mr. Vinod Zutshi. He's an IAS retired former secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. Mr. Zutshi, he's former secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. Mr. Vinod Zutshi joined Indian Administrative Services, IAS, in 1982 and belonged to Rajasthan cadre. He superannuated in February 2017 at the post of Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. Mr. Zutshi has 35 years of experience in central government and government of Rajasthan with long experience and exposure in the field of tourism, public policy and administration, management and election and democratic governance. He held many other key positions, some of them being Secretary Ministry of Culture, Government of India, Secretary Tourism, Government of Rajasthan, Secretary Civil Aviation, Government of Rajasthan. He has also served as Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India between 2015 to 2017. He also held the following positions in tourism sector at national level: Secretary, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, Vice Chairman, National Tourism Advisory Council, India, Chairman PATA, Chapter India, Board Member PATA, Chairman NCHMCT, Chairman Board of Governors IHM PUSA, and Vice Chairman Board of Directors IITTM. He held many key positions in tourism sector in the state of Rajasthan, namely Secretary Tourism, Government of Rajasthan, Secretary Civil Aviation, Government of Rajasthan, Commissioner Tourism, Government of Rajasthan, Chairman and Managing Director, Rajasthan Tourism Development Corporation, and CMD, Rajasthan State Hotels Corporation. He has also been District Collector and District Magistrate of Jaipur, Alwar, Dosa, and Dholpur districts. Mr. Vinod Zutshi is now a consultant and advisor in travel and tourism for more than 3 years and is based in Delhi. Some of the key organizations with which Mr. Zutshi is currently associated as consultant, advisor, and honorary member are member, Managing Committee of National Apex Body of PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, honorary member, Tourism Committee, PhD Chambers of Commerce and Industry, OYO as a member, independent expert of Partner Advisory Council, member of CII, National Committee on Tourism and Hospitality, advisor to FICCI Medical Value, Travel Committee, Executive Member of India Cruise Lines, Member, Board of Trustees Foundation for Aviation and Sustainable Tourism, Honorary Member, Ecotourism Society of India, President, New Tourism Foundation, Consultant A&M Residency Hotels, Consultant and Advisor, For Consultants India, Consultant and Advisor, Manpower Group India, Advisor, KGS Microsystems, Consultants, Indian Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi, Museum Domain in Expert Commission of India, and we are privileged to have him that he has joined in IAAPI platform as an advisor. Mr. Zutshi is alumni of Harvard Kennedy School and MBA from Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi University. He is also an advocate enrolled with Bar Council of India. Friends, you can see how long the profile is and how experienced Mr. Zutshi is. Mr. Zutshi is also a resource person in the area of travel and tourism. In the recent past, he has visited as guest speaker at IAS Academy, LBSNAA Mussoorie, Indian Institute of Public Administration, Central University of Banaras Hindu University, Garhwal University, and University of Pondicherry, Amity University Noida, IIT-TM Bhubaneswar, and Jamia Millia University. Mr. Vinod Zutshi has traveled far and wide during his long career in various capacities. He has traveled more than 30 countries and has in-depth knowledge on tourism sector world over. We request Mr. Zutshi on what domestic and international tourism should mean for us post-COVID-19 and also guide us on how amusement industry can be part and parcel of tourism industry. Over to Mr. Zutshi, please. Mr. Zutshi, please come.
Thank you, Mr. Anuj, for such an elaborate description of my profile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ajay Sarin, Mr. Rajiv, the members of the IAAPI organization, participants from travel and tourism industry today in this interactive session, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy about things today. Firstly, that I am speaking to the amusement industry for the first time, something which I missed when I was Secretary Tourism, Government of India. Secondly, because today onwards, I'm going to have a long-term association with IAAPI as an advisor, and I'm really looking forward to working with IAAPI to take this industry forward and to commanding heights. Ladies and gentlemen, today in this session, I shall try to give a comprehensive overview of amusement industry at global level and India, with the overall theme of how amusement industry can be rebuilt post-COVID and even in the midst of COVID, I would say. And secondly, how to recover, after being hit so hard by the COVID pandemic. And thirdly, what should be our future strategies to collaborate with the within the fraternity of amusement industry, to collaborate with other verticals of tourism sector, and to also collaborate and seek support from the union government, the state governments, the other government authorities at various levels. So for all this, I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll take you through this PowerPoint presentation and describing in detail each and every aspect of today's subject. So I request the controller of the webinar PPT to kindly place the PPT on the screen, please.
Yes, Principal Mr. Zutshi.
Thank you, Mr. Anuj. So, friends, can I come to the slide? Next slide, please. Yeah. Friends, I'll begin with a little bit about global amusement industry. I mean, the trends and the status which happened before the COVID started, and what's been the impact, and how the parks are recovering and rebuilding. How are they reopening in some countries like Florida and in Shanghai, Walt Disney? There has been a reopening. What have been their experiences? I mean, that will be useful for translating them or using them, replicating them in the Indian context once the lockdown is lifted in India as well, and of course the future prospects. So basically, I don't want to go into the figures, but amusement industry and attraction industry, as they call it. There is an organization called IAAPI about which all of you would be knowing. So in all, it's a huge industry. It's a huge industry with billions of dollars involved. In fact, in terms of visitors, I picked up the figure from IAAPA figures of 2016. They had projected a total 1,200 million visitors in 2019. And one can imagine that the way the industry is progressing in terms of the growth, it is certainly going to touch 10 to 15% in the coming years once the COVID settles down. As far as the impact of COVID is concerned, we all know it is not just India. The entire amusement industry, ladies and gentlemen, came to a standstill globally. There have been huge losses, and there's no point in quantifying the losses. It won't serve any purpose. But then, what is the road to recovery? That is more important for our concern. I would like to flag two particular case studies. China has been the earliest start. Shanghai, the Disneyland has started with 30% occupancy or 30% of people allowed. That was in May. And Universal Park in Florida and some more parks in Florida have started from June 1st. Some have done partially. In phase one, they have started with 50%, and phase two, they propose to start at 75%. Other major players like Six Flags and Busch Gardens, Cedar, some of them had a proposal to start from 15 July. It's been just a day earlier. So one has to see what other global parks have started. Now, in Florida, the moment it has started, the media and there's been a lot of fretting and fuming on opening of parks, and they say that the number of cases of corona have increased after the parks have opened, but then the administration is totally supportive there, and no such decision has been taken. And I have seen the videos of these 2-3 places where the reopening has started. People are jubilant, although the capacity is low, and the occupancy is of course very low because there is the limit that we had originally set. So as far as India is concerned, as you know, the unlockdown guidelines which were issued on 30th June for 1st July onwards, amusement parks unfortunately have still been put under the lockdown. Now, I would like to cite some of the experiences of opening of these parks, because India is also going through the same process, and it's always good to experience from others rather than experiencing yourself. Now, in Florida, I'll take two cases. One is Universal Theme Park in Florida, which started in first week of June, and the other is Shanghai. Now, the experience in the first, say, 1.5 months in Florida has been it drew less visitors. Consumers were reluctant to gather in crowds initially. Of course, there was no wait time for visitors because the crowd was less. They all followed social distancing and enhanced cleaning. In fact, people were made to keep social distancing. But the crowding of visitors at temperature checks, visitors did not keep distance unless encouraged and monitored by the staff. That was one of the experiences which were reported from Florida. And according to them, getting guests to social distance was a bigger challenge than laying the infrastructure. So even the new reservation system was developed, and in fact, the coming back of the park bill is estimated to be slow but gradual. In the second case study of Shanghai's Disneyland, it had opened earlier in May, and they limited the capacity to 30% at the moment. Again, less people, social distancing was easier to maintain. And it was something like, according to this experience, it was just like in India, if it is a pre-pandemic off-peak weekday in the afternoon or wherever there is a non-prime time, something, the crowd was something like that. No casual entries were allowed. No last minute decisions to visit a park. You have to do online ticketing. Then IAAPA guidelines were followed in terms of online purchases of tickets. Then all inclusive packages were followed, which included even the fooding and games and shopping through online booking. And only guests will arrive, nobody else will arrive at the gates. Social distancing, big markers were made where to stand. Temperature check has been done. Face masks, one disposable mask has been provided to the guests who did not bring their own. Parking spaces were staggered. In Disney, as you know, I will like to recall that there is a there's an appearance of characters, Disney characters there, who generally hug and they greet and meet people. Now that, of course, as per the guideline, has been stopped, and instead a vehicle, there's a drive by where the characters, they sit on the vehicle and they go pass by the visitors, so they just watch from a distance and say bye bye and all. I saw a video also the other day, and it was pretty good in the sense that social distancing things were mentioned, were maintained. In terms of the actual equipments, what they found was two challenges: was keeping social distancing in the coaster and other rides. In Shanghai, riders were to sit one row apart, and staggered seating was there. Some rides were allowed only for one group of people per car to avoid, having people with strangers sitting with strangers. Then other things were marked signs and taped areas. More performance of certain shows because the capacity is low. So instead of having just one show in a day, they repeated many shows, on the same day, so that people with 30% capacity, they are able to see and they can use it more. Then longer time and safety and entry and exit venues. It took a lot of time to enter to exit because of, again, they were staggered. They were not hurled into as in a crowd. Hand sanitizers at all entrances. In terms of fooding, the table resetting, as we have done in restaurants in India also. Open air is being preferred than a closed indoor because of COVID threat. Placing orders via smartphone. You see the menu on board, disposable plates and crockery. And these are some of the steps which were taken in Shanghai as a case study. Now, why I mention all this in detail is because same issues will come in the context of India also. And in fact, even if suppose the guidelines for Indian amusement industry may not have been issued by MOT so far, but it is time that we must frame and place it before MOT, because sooner or later unlock down will happen, but the things will remain the same. And as a guideline to the ministry and to the government and to the local authorities, more or less it is the same. They've already placed those amusement parks which have hotels and accommodation within have to follow what hotels are being followed. Uh, if there are restaurants, the same guideline which restaurants are following, because of these new guidelines coming from Government of India, have to follow. Similarly, other things which are common as a standalone and within amusement parks. So that is not difficult to frame those guidelines and implement them. The only thing is that the government has still not been convinced about starting off amusement parks and cinemas. And as one of the questions has also been raised, can we not debracket from cinema and entertainment and combine? Yes, we can. I will answer this question later at the end of my presentation. Now, coming to the next Indian amusement industry, can I have the next slide, please? Well, in India, I don't need to elaborate the growth trends. I mean, you all would be knowing better than me. But one thing is sure, that the domestic tourism is always been very consistently high. We have been recording 13% and more since 1991. And when domestic tourism is high, it augurs well for the amusement industry, because primarily we are dependent on the domestic tourism. And in terms of number of parks, I mean, I would say that India has not opened and it's not started. People have not starting resorting to the amusement parks. In fact, one of the questions which has also been raised by one of the participants today, I'll answer it in detail more, but since I'm speaking in that context, unfortunately, amusement industry has not figured much, or I would say nowhere, even in the tourism policy. In 2002 policy, it's a very brief policy which is still operational, but the 2015 draft policy also, which has not seen the light of the day, there is no mention of amusement industry. Now, this is something which I think, now in terms of number of parks that we have with 1.35 billion population, I have a feeling that there is a lot of scope with whatever parts we have to expand, to increase in volume, and number two, to have more investments in the amusement industry. I'm speaking of the pre-COVID thinking. I mean, post-COVID has thrown new challenges, but then ultimately another year, another 1.5 years, and you will have almost the new normal will like the normal. Rather, it should be better than the normal. Though, so we have to see all these the growth figures. So we have been growing in any case pre-COVID at the rate of about 11% CAGR. So I would pitch that once the COVID threat is over, we are through with the vaccine, we are with most of the issues, and people have started moving normally, we should aim at least 20% growth, at least for the next 2 to 3 years, and then ultimately make a 10-year decade plan as to where would we be at the end of 10th year. I will speak about some global research which has been done on amusement industry all over the globe, but maybe at a later stage. So basically, amusement industry in India has tremendous potential. We have not been able to tap that potential. COVID has come in between, but now it's time that we have to bring in this industry at the centers to point that why can't we merge the tourism industry and be in the mainstream. Amusement industry is certainly not in the mainstream. I think it is seen more with entertainment industry, with other industries, and not with tourism. But let me tell you, even film tourism we have been projecting and as an entertainment and making it as a part of tourism. So same exercise, ladies and amusement industry also becomes part of the tourism industry and comes in the mainstream. Now, impact of COVID-19, I will not go into great detail because you people have been the biggest sufferers. And but then I at least know that there's been financial loss, there's been unemployment, there's been working capital crunch, the rusting of machineries, the fixed costs are there. So we have been hit very hard. And let us hope that the lockdown is lifted at the earliest, and we start the recovery process. So can we have the next slide, please? Well, now, main issue is how to reopen and how to recover, how to rebuild. So, friends, our first target should be, as an action point, is that we must get it opened. We must get it reopened. Now, the question is, how can we do it? One answer has already been given in a question, that we must convince the governments. Now, when I say governments, it means we have to first of all convince the Ministry of Health, we have to convince the Ministry of Home, we have to convince Ministry of Tourism. And as you know, Ministry of Tourism is our gateway for all the sectors, for all the ministries. So we have to go through MOT, but I would not mind even going through directly to the Ministries of Health and Home to impress upon them that we are different from the entertainment industry, we are different from cinema, we are just like hotels and malls, mini malls, placed in an open area. Even the restaurants can be an open restaurant instead of those closed restaurants. If closed restaurants can be allowed, if malls can be allowed, why can't amusement? But ultimately, what is important is how health safe we are going to be, or to provide health safety to the people, that has to be driven into the mind. And this needs some kind of networking with the government. So I would call upon the management of IAAPI that we can work together, make up a proposal in between. You never know, another 15 days and 31st July, you may find another extension by the government on the same lines, that it is also like cinema and all. So we must use this time to put across this point before the ministry that we are different. And also whatever guidelines and part opening, if you can do, and you can propose, which is of course should be economically feasible also. Why can't you have just F&B? Why can't you have just open air restaurants? Why can't you have merchandising? Why can't you have even wedding, which has been allowed by the government at the moment? There may not be water park. You need not limit rides may be limited. All those social distancing measures. So these guidelines and a wide detailed proposal, I would say, must be forwarded to the government that we are prepared to make all these health safety measures, and so you should lift the lockdown as early as possible. That requires us to formulate the standard SOPs and guidelines, which has to be endorsed by the Ministry of Tourism and, of course, the other ministries. Now, that task of preparing SOP and guidelines should be started. I would like to recall CII and FICCI and Faith and IAAPI, what they have done. They have prepared the SOPs and guidelines for different verticals and have posed before the Ministry of Tourism. In fact, Ministry of Tourism did ask them that you put up your guidelines, and accordingly they have just put their label from Ministry of Tourism, and they have issued Pan India. Now, this is something which we also need to do if we have not done, and pose those guidelines. Those guidelines proposals can be made. You can mention about if hotels can start with 30% or 50% occupancy in the entire country. Of course, Delhi hasn't started. Restaurants can start with 50% capacity. Shops can start. The malls shopping can start. So can these activities within the amusement park can also start. So we must make a plan. First, we must convince the government with that plan. Second, we must tell what all infrastructure would be laid or has been laid once the lockdown would be lifted in order to convince. You can even quote that these guidelines are almost on the lines of international guidelines given by the IAAPI or Water Park World Park Association in order to convince the government. So basically, this is a exercise I think we should all do before the government in order to get the lockdown lifted. And once the lockdown is lifted, then of course it is for you as to how you strategize, what kind of actions you take, what kind of reopening you do, whether you do partial reopening, whether you do pick up some activities and keep the remaining activities in phase 2. What should be the total percentage of people that we would allow, and all the protocols that you have to follow. I will come to that when we discussed about the protocol, health protocol slide. But here I would like to mention that partial opening is one of the strategies which can be followed. I would like to quote Six Flags New Jersey, which has opened its safari adventure to members and pass holders alone. Similarly, Walt Disney Orlando have reopened only retail shops and dining in the month of May itself, instead of opening the entire park. Now, that depends from park to park whether it is feasible to start these operations, but there is always a possibility to convince the government that we will start only these two things partially. And once they have started, even then, looking at your cost benefit, you must take a decision whether you want to start completely or whether you want to all the activities together with 30%, 50% capacity, whatever is allowed, or you want to do more some of the areas and avoid some of the other areas. That also has to be decided at park level. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, the issue is on domestic market, and there are questions also when domestic market is booming, when domestic tourism is to begin first in all the states. Of course, yes, amusement parks, theme parks have a very high probability of doing well because of domestic tourism rising. I'm not going into the past, but the present situation would be that you have to aim at the local catchment area from where the people are likely to come in while living with the COVID. I'm more on the living with the COVID instead of talking of post COVID, because friends, none of us know what is going to be the post COVID. So today, even in the midst of COVID, the economy has been open, the tourism industry has been open. So is going to be with amusement with certain restrictions. So post COVID is still a question mark. So I'm not talking much on post COVID, but then Certainly a day will come when COVID will be totally vanished, hopefully. At that point of time, things will more or less be normal rather than better than before, because by this time, the technology would have come. So, friends, my basic idea is focus on local level, focus on district level. For outsiders coming outside the district, some of them, if they are coming for a particular destination, club their visit with the destination, put them in the itineraries, put them on the tourist maps, and so that when people visit, they should know that there is a theme park around this area and they can spend half a day or full day there as well, along with the destination. And at this time, I must say that you must keep your consumers engaged through social media. You must refresh the promotion of your park in around short distance travel, as everyone has agreed would be would go on for at least 6 months from now, and then people will start traveling long distances, except for the business tourist visitors. So work with district administration, work with local authorities, and even if you have to start in small number, I think you must get into the game and use these domestic tourists as much as possible. Pick up the health safe destinations first. In fact, if you are thinking of starting something in Delhi, core of Delhi, maybe it may not happen immediately. In Mumbai, it may not happen immediately. Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, these are more infested area. But I must take the names of Goa, Northeast, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan has almost flattened the curve. Uttarakhand, Odisha, even West Bengal for some reason. I think these are the places. In fact, Andhra is also good, but then gradually the numbers are increasing. So what I'm saying is that those parks which are situated in safer destination can project better that we are a safe destination, the city is safe, and therefore the theme park also will be. So you can push to the state government, and state government always gives its feedback to the center, because when Ministry of Health and Ministry of Home issues guidelines, they seek information from the state government. So it's also time, ladies and gentlemen, that we must get in touch with the state government and impress upon them that theme parks are not as risky as one thinks about it. And number two, we are putting all the health infrastructure to. Now, even if suppose you open your park, the next immediate thing is you have to build consumer confidence. People should be able to come. So use social media, consumer confidence, local publicity. In fact, I will recall some of the airlines which have started, Vistara and Etihad. Every day they are sending a mail, make my trip, also the OTA, that we are going to follow this, we are going to follow this seating pattern and all, come and we fumigate and this that. Now this kind of thing, to my mind, whether individual parks do it themselves, I've seen that some of them have started. I won't name them, but then I was very happy to see that engaging with the people, engaging with your future consumers within the domestic sector should start and keep them busy. In some cases, it is even in terms of launching quizzes and contests. So even if people are not coming, at least keep them engaged, be visible, be known to people. They should not forget, and you should bring them in their memories again and again. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, coming to the role of stakeholders. Now, this is very important. We have the stakeholders like union government ministries. I didn't mention just Ministry of Tourism because there are many issues. In fact, if I may recall the demand charter, which has been posed by IAAPI to the government, it is they are related more not with so much with Ministry of Tourism, but other ministries. For example, issues regarding GST and giving some removal of GST for 12 months, deferment of fiscal statutory compliance deadlines, customs duties, and likewise some other. Now, most of the demands which have been posed are related to other ministries, even in terms of ESIC, which is related to Ministry of Labor. So we have to deal with Ministry of Home and Health, for example, in the beginning till the lockdown is lifted. After that, maybe we don't have to deal with them. But in the meantime, ESIC, Ministry of Labor, then your Ministry of Finance, RBI, these are the stakeholders with whom we have to interact. Now, I would take the details of the demand charter and give my comments on each of them separately when we come to that slide. But the point is that we must present a case to them. I'm only repeating what I mentioned earlier, to Ministry of Home, the Health, the Ministry of Tourism before the lockdown is lifted. There is a question as to what Ministry of Tourism can do for amusement park. I would wish to attend that question here, in the sense that, let me tell you, as far as amusement parks are concerned, I have been in the ministry, I have been in the state, in the tourism department. So you would need more help from the state government, from the district authorities, rather than from the center. I have also already mentioned about the policy. We need to incorporate amusement industry into the new policy because it is still in the draft stage. That is a different matter. But the point is that in the overall expenditure or the schemes that Government of India has in Ministry of Tourism, let me tell you, we spend 65 to 70% on infrastructure. So we pass on money to the government, state governments, and they make the tourism infrastructure. So money doesn't come to any industry. You have a good infrastructure for people, which will help the industry, but not directly to the industry. Then we have promotional money, almost 20 to 25% promotional money. Then we have money for skilling for these institutes of tourism management and the IHMs and all. Then we have money to be given to ITDC and to ASI for monuments and to make have some small projects. The only thing that is passed on to the industry directly is through market development assistance. That is one, in which again there are different schemes that if any tour operator, any travel person, or anyone in the industry wants to go and attend some conclave, some international conference, so the traveling charges and some staying charges, something is given by way of market development assistance. Similarly, people can be brought from outside and as a fam tour, and then his money is being reimbursed. That is one. The other thing is to conduct events. So ministry gives money for conducting events. PhD, CCI, and CII, and the FICCI, they all get money to conduct events on different themes of tourism. And even private sector, when they want to take some support, or whether there's a logo support, financial support, they get some money. Then we have separate scheme for golf and other those niche tourism area in which some money is given for the events. So these are the schemes where we are not directly giving, and in the present state of things, there is nothing which is given directly to the entrepreneurs, to the industry, by way of any direct benefit. One very important scheme which exists in Ministry of Finance is viability gap funding. Now, let me tell you that in viability gap funding, that answers one of the questions, rather two of the questions, that how can ISC get some funding from tourist scheme, or I'm just not restricting only to ISC. The recreational facilities are also allowed in the viability gap. Briefly, I will tell. 25% subsidy is provided, and up to an amount ceiling of 50 crores. And 200 crores investment can also be done. So, of course, recreational facility is included along with resorts, with your what do you call convention centers, with vessels, and these other areas where theme parks and amusement parks can draw the viability gap funding scheme and money from there. There is a process for that. The state government has to pitch in. State government, the private, it's a PPP arrangement. Then only it can work. It will not work only alone with one private sector. So this is in very short. We can attend to all these schemes later on at some other forum. But the fact remains that we can deal with some of the schemes, but not all. State governments are more important, and both in terms of beginning the unlock down. Although once the central government allows, say maybe from 1st August onwards or earlier, the state may also object. Like case of Delhi, you have seen hotels have not been allowed. Government of India has allowed, but Delhi government has not allowed. So we have to pitch in with the state governments also to see that even if the central government lifts the lockdown, we must take it up with the state government also. And for many other support, as I mentioned, whether it is electricity, whether it is water, whether it is licensing, the local authorities, these are more important. Law and order, then the central government and Ministry of Tourism. Let us focus more on the state government schemes and incentives and levies and other things. And of course, same applies to municipal local bodies because local permissions, connections are given by them. So we have to keep them also into loop and they can be of great use. Similarly, till the time COVID is there, health department is also very important. And of course, I would call upon the members and management of IAAPI that at the national level, you must be proactive, more assertive with these stakeholders, with dealing with union government and ministries. Even with the state government, the management can take up at the state level and then followed up with your regional chapters and by the parks at the district level. So this is about the stakeholders where we have to deal with. My point is, let us be more proactive, let us be more receptive, let us be more visible with them, let us be more interactive, let us deal with them, interact with them in some events, seminars, which may be conducted by IIP, by the regional chapter, so that there is more communication, there is more dialogue between the industry and the government representatives. In fact, I recall one webinar day before yesterday. It was on cross-border tourism. Honorable Minister of Tourism, Government of India, was there to inaugurate. And he spoke something which I'm referring here is he said that for any problem that you have, please talk to us. Please mail me. You can even email directly to me. So I'm not saying what may happen in future, whether all the emails are approved or maybe agreed to, but the look at the minister's gesture of calling upon anyone that you can write to me and I will certainly see how. And he said that we are not here to listen to our, हम तारीफ सुनने के लिए नहीं आप लोगों के सामने आए हैं, हम आए हैं आप लोगों से आपकी कठिनाइयां सुनने. Now I would also recall and compliment Mr. Ajay Sareen and Mr. Rajiv and the management. I had the occasion to see that the interaction that you had with Honorable Minister Mr. Gadkari, and you must have noted that even Mr. Gadkari, in every problem of yours, he ended saying, "Come and meet me, come and meet me. You come to Delhi and meet me." Now, this is the kind of response we are getting from the union government. So I think we need to open up, we need to open out, we need to be more interactive and more proactive with these stakeholders. They will not mind it. And I will certainly help you as advisor in suggesting you how to approach these stakeholders. Can we have the next slide, please? Right. Now, this issue is important for all of you, although you are more aware about, what is the viability situation, what is that. But just few tips. I am a management graduate also, so I believe in, proper planning and systematic projections and future planning. So just, you have to work out your financial requirements. Assuming that the lifting of the lockdown is very near, every park has to see what is its working capital, how much to start with, what is the roadmap, what is my financial requirement for the next 2 years. You work out for 2021 and you work out for 21-22 up to March and see how you would like to open, what activities you will open. Forget about the restrictions. You have to see your own viability. So your own model and ideal plan should be before you. Let us not just look at the government. Maybe after 1 month or 2 months, they may say, all right, you open up, no problem. So in that situation, whether you could start the whole park, whether it is feasible to you, or whether you will like to do gradually, because don't forget, even when you bring in some health infrastructure, it has a price. You will have to spend a lot of money on creating changes. If you have to channelize the movement, the entry separate and exit separate, you will have to make some infrastructural arrangements. A lot of money may have to be invested. I'm not talking of hand sanitizer and masks, these are very cheap things. But then, even in terms of volume of business, people will not like to not to sit in the staggered seat. So your volume of business will be less. So please see how you would like to begin. But my advice to you is you must begin. Calculate your break even, calculate your cost benefit. See what your fixed costs are, see what your operational costs are. Try to see that your operational costs are at least covered. And to one of the suggestions and questions that came before me earlier, what about rationalization? I am in favor of rationalization of staff. You reduce the staff. Unskilled staff is not required. Unskilled labor can be laid off. It may be too late by now. You may have already done it. You depend on the contractual staff and the contractual, but keep and retain the skilled staff, because you may not get the skilled staff later on, the trained staff, because you spend a lot of money on them, and getting skilled staff at the later stage may be a problem. But the contractual, so there is no problem in rationalizing, there is no problem in cost cutting and reducing your costs. As far as pricing is concerned, I am always for low pricing in terms of penetration of the market. People will be reluctant to come on the health safety ground, and at the same time, people will be reluctant to pay very heavy money for during parks, because money comes, big money comes when there is crowd, when there are people coming and there is, no availability, so they are ready to pay anything. So that demand has arisen. It may take some time. Low pricing, in fact, even in international cases, I've seen that some of the parks have started with reduced rates. So even if there's unviable, but at least you should be in the business, that is important. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would say that while you are preparing about health infrastructure, what are the cost implications, whatever losses have happened. Don't try to recover losses in one day or 1 month or 2 months. You may have to stagger it for some time. Most important thing is how you can operationally be viable to begin with when you start. Otherwise, all these days, what will happen is you waited for the lockdown to be lifted. And once the lockdown is lifted, you thought, oh, everything is unviable. I will not start. I'll start only when the COVID ends totally. Now, that would mean, going away from the visibility, and people, your other competitors may supersede and maybe take advantage of that. Can I have the next slide, please? Well, coming to the health safe protocol and procedures, I don't need to tell in detail, but I would suggest to IAAPI, there are IAAPA guidelines, international guidelines. I have a copy with me. I can send it to the secretariat. It can be circulated amongst the members. Then there are also World Water Park Association guidelines. I can circulate that as well. The MOT guidelines have to come, because that will be followed in India by one and all, and that will be followed by the state governments also, even the districts. If there is any complaint, people will refer to the MOT guideline or the guideline issued by the central government. So these consolidation of all guidelines work should start now, and you should come out with a standardized guideline, which is, by default to be adopted by the IIP members. There can be some additional safeguards in a particular park. It depends from park to park, but you must have a minimum base level of the health protocol which you're going to follow in a typical park having all the activities. So, which and monitoring them be a great time. So you can think of having CCTV, on the premises, and you will have to have some watchmen and guards, who can keep telling people not to overcrowd and keep a watch on that. So other than that, in terms of health protocol, I have listed some of them: how to channelize the flow of visitors, how to control the crowd at the gates and all the places, have different time slots, health check mechanism, testing of temperature, and then other things, sanitization. The equipments have to be sanitized after every ride. Social distance in open areas, putting masks and all inside the games also and at the equipments, and then do's and don't signages, and then, as I mentioned, supervision of and monitoring has to be done. In fact, the safety screens, with the for the staff is also, they call it plexiglass screen, which is used all over India. Even in the T3 airport, if you see, they have put those screens before the staff, so that even there is a slight interaction between the staff of the park and the people. Even toilets have to be sanitized one at a time. For men can also be followed. Separate entries and exits could be done. Then touchless toilets, those makeshift toilets, temporary toilets could also be a good idea, because that can be spread over in the premises. I would recall one such coach, which has been developed by the Indian Railway, which is touchless. You move it with the feet. In fact, I saw it one of the what in the theme parks also in the video, that they have the touch, through the feet, and the water comes out and all. So all these things, innovations, use of technology, I think will go a long way. And I'm not talking of the equipments where you may have to have separate seat spacing, and then food outlet. I've already mentioned open air restaurant, shopping outlets. Again, just like shopping is allowed in India, you have markers in front of the shops. Same thing, can be done in this case also. And even the main gate, you can have a D zone, because people, you can't control the crowd beyond your park. On the main road, if people assemble, it's not your problem, but you can make a security cover, or maybe a D, just like a hockey field D, with barricading. People, once they come inside your D, then otherwise you will find that a lot of crowd gets assembled at the gate, and you will not be able to. And somebody from the police and somebody will say, sir, these parks are having a lot of crowd, let us send the report to the district magistrate, they should close. So you have to be very careful about this part also. Now, I would like to come to the next slide, please. Yeah. Now, I will discuss a little bit about the relief from the government. I have seen the charter of demand which has been sent to the ministries and to the government. So one is about the Employee State Insurance Corporation to pay the entire wages. Now, this is important. ESIC and Ministry of Labor has provided some relief in the ESIC procedures and ECIC front, but then we need to take up the rest of the things dealing with the amusement parks with the Ministry of Labor, through the Ministry of Tourism, and even directly with Ministry of Labor. For all these demand charter, my request to Mr. Ajay Sarin and Mr. Rajiv and the board is that we must work on each of these charter demands separately, instead of just posing it to FICCI, or instead of just posing it, or maybe giving one such demand charter to one ministry and then forgetting about it. We have to pick up one point at a time and have a strategy as to how we can approach different people. Similarly, waiver of customs duties, of course, is an issue of Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Commerce. So we have to, and for every of these points, it should not be just one liner. We should have detailed proposal dealing with amusement, and don't talk about tourism industry as a whole, because that Faith and FICCI and CIA have already taken that. You must restrict yourself to your own problem, which may be submerged and subsumed in the overall policy framework or guidelines of the Ministry of Tourism or other. But most of the issues, as I had mentioned earlier, are not dealing with Ministry of Tourism. They should be used more as a gateway. Similarly, in terms of loss of rate of interest to be made more effective, again, through Ministry of Tourism, it deals with Ministry of Finance, and of course, it has to do with the Reserve Bank of India. Then Manrega point, which has been mentioned in the memorandum, I would say that this Manrega demand is, I'm afraid, may not be a very valid demand. It may not be accepted, because nowhere in any scheme the governments give salary or some kind of employment to the people who have been laid off, or direct transfers to the employees. So I would say that we can put it in the second list. But other things which are directly related to the impact of COVID, I think we should take it up. Now, water electricity is your next point. As I mentioned, take up with state government. All the past original chapters, or even the secretariat of IAAPI can prepare letters to the state governments and circulate to all of them that we will need some facility in water industry. And this is where the industry status vis-a-vis the state government comes into picture, because if you have the industry status within the state, then your water and electricity charges will be charged as per the industry rate, and automatically you will get the benefit. But this is something to do with state government, and you must take up with each of the state government. Same thing will be for the minimum fixed cost charges of electricity, and similar thing will be applied for property tax and non-agriculture tax, because this is also the subject of state government. So these last 3 points are related to state government, but we must pose all these issues and send it to the state government right today, and follow it up and deal more proactively. And lower rate of income tax and early settlement of income tax refunds, of course, again an issue of Ministry of Finance, that it has to be combined with everyone, because it may not be different only for amusement industry. And of course, extend all existing licenses. Now, whatever licenses are, I'm not aware of the licenses which are needed for amusement parks, I think they must be more with the state government. In case of Ministry of Tourism, I have seen the classification and recognition of travel operators, tour agents, that has already been done. They have just extended without any formal operation. So how would the modus operandi be? Now, for all these demands, as I have mentioned, during the COVID days, you had a very good meeting with Gadkari ji. You could think of having a similar meeting with either ministers or with the secretary, with the joint secretaries, and pose these problems so that they get registered in their mind. You can also go through FICCI or take them along and pose these issues, because in FICCI, in its report, of which I was one of the authors, we have mentioned all your demands, which has been mentioned in your charter, in that FICCI report also, if you can see that report. So FICCI can accompany you. I can speak to them, and you also have a good dealing with FICCI. So we can work together and pose it before the government on the FICCI and IAAPI platform. And likewise, as I had mentioned, you have to uh, deal with the state governments and make specific proposals for each of these demands. Now, these demands are just one specific example. You may have different more demands to come in future. Can we have the next slide, please? Well, let me tell you, as I mentioned initially, we are not to operate in isolation. We need to have regular interaction. I will tell my own experience. In my entire tenure as Secretary Tourism, I had not registered any event or any convention, any seminar, anything, any field activity where I may have gone related to amusement industry. And that is why I mentioned that this is the first time I'm addressing the amusement industry. Now, in all other cases, whether it is tour operator, whether it is FHRAI, whether it is hotel association, and all other verticals and sectors of areas of the sector, tourism sector, one had a very fair good idea. There was more of interaction. Every second day one would meet people from. Now we have to bring a paradigm shift in our being proactive. We must be more visible. We must be visible by way of meeting these people personally. We should merge ourselves with the tourism mainstream, as I mentioned. We must conduct events and seminars and conclaves on various subjects so that we are visible in the media. We should also be try to be part of National Tourism Task Force, which has been set up. And I remember PhD Chamber of Commerce was not made a member, so I suggested to the director dealing with this subject that you kindly send your application and request, and ultimately MOT agreed. Same thing IIP can also do. Even if suppose till the time you are not enrolled as a member or invitee in the tourism task force, at least we can pose all these issues which you have flagged in the charter, addressing to the secretary of the National Tourism Task Force. Similarly, we have National Advisory Committee. I do not know whether IIP is a part of National Advisory Committee, but we should definitely try to become part of this advisory committee, and I can certainly try to be of some help. Not just Ministry of Tourism, but the state level and district level also, you should have your presence felt, and you must be more visible in the state level and at the district level as well. Next slide, please. So that means that we have to, once we are in full bloom, ladies and gentlemen, we have to adopt and refresh our promotional strategy. We have to take up at local level, at district level, at regional level, till the COVID threat exists, and then go pan India. We must try to club even the international visitors with domestic visitors with some destination which they have come to see. So people may not come, we may not have that image or that kind of infrastructure or world class park even now compared to where Disney's and other parks of the world universal. But when the international tourists come, they would be, they can at least spend some time, as and it should be part of the itinerary. For domestic tourists coming to that part from a distance, it can also be found in the itinerary. As I mentioned, your park should be part of the tourism map, whether made by the state, whether made by any agency, and we must try to be visible as a promotion. I would also suggest to each of the parks who can afford and who has a big footfall to have their own mobile application. Technology, digital technology will be very important. Your bookings will have to stop at the gates for some time. Make mobile applications, prepare your websites, make it a payment gateway, make it an online ticketing gateway for your park. IIPI can work on a standard website, on a standard mobile, and you can rope in some person from the technology and start working on this, because this is very important and this is going to be of great help, not just for the next 6 months or 1 year, even post-COVID, post-vaccine, I would say that it is going to be of great use. So use of technology, ladies and gentlemen, will be very important. And the more technology you use, the staff rationalization can be easier. You can cut down the costs, after COVID also. And of course, to attract people, it could be more, technology based individual games, family games. Family will not have any problem in being 5 6 7 people as a group. They can play any game because they don't have any problem of social distancing. Similarly, virtual experience games can also be a part of that. And can I have the next slide, please? Oh, sorry. Just, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to mention that uh, the growth prospects of amusement is phenomenal in India. As I had mentioned, we are untapped, we are underutilized. We are catering presently to the middle and the upper middle domestic tourists more. We need some more world class infrastructure, which can be done later on with more investments. There was a question about FDI. What is the FDI status for tourism industry, and particularly for amusement? I will like to mention that when the question comes to me. So while we are living with the COVID, ladies and gentlemen, we may have to live with low volume of business. We have to live with low viability. Viability will be an issue. Your operational cost should be realized, but do start. Once the post-COVID and post-COVID vaccine stage comes, then of course the volumes will increase. Let's prepare ourselves for the new normal, and the future roadmap, as I would like to mention, as I had mentioned earlier also, we have to not just cater for the immediate, that the next 6 months or 1 year, let us all combinedly, under the banner of IIPI, prepare a complete roadmap for the next decade. It should be a 10-year perspective plan. Ministry of Tourism, in fact, should study and look at. But if they are not doing it, the state governments are not doing it, IIPI should get this study conducted through some research body so that a roadmap is prepared for the industry. Where are we going to be after 10 years? There has to be some plan, there has to be some ambition, there has to be some target which we should all reach to. How global we are going to become, what global new technologies can be brought in. So these are the things which I think I would like to flag here. I cannot go into great details at this stage. I have tried to cover a larger portion related to amusement industry and how we can move forward. Details we can have separate sessions or maybe at later stage, since I am with you for the next 1 year. So friends, before I conclude, let us all work together. The future is very bright. We must have at least 20% growth. COVID will go sooner or later. 4 months in the history of the country, which has 5,000 years of civilization history and 73 years of independence and that many years in the tourism sector, I think we should not be disappointed. We should not be gloomy. We should rise up. We should have resilience. We should have endurance. We should have patience. And we should have hope and optimism. I'm a very optimistic person, and things come and go. The only thing is we must have our self-confidence with us. In some cases, there can be late starting. In some cases, that may start earlier. But the percentage of people who will come in India, I can say that I would like to also quote that there is a plateau in the growth of visitors in the Floridas and in Western Europe, in Europe and America. But China has registered, in fact, phenomenally. I would say that two or three of their groups, groups rather, yeah. Shimlong group has registered 24% growth. Fanta Wild has grown 77%. Songcheng worldwide has grown 53%. So maybe China people are seeing this new product, which Orlando's and Florida's have seen for years together. So India is totally raw, and that's why I'm posing at least 20% growth, and it may not be difficult. How we can achieve this? We need to strategize. We need to work together and work in a very planned manner. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall bounce back. I can assure you that I will certainly try to make all efforts to take the industry forward. And before I close and hand over back to Mr. Anuj, I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to Mr. Ajay Sarin, to Mr. Rajiv, and to the entire management and board of IAAPI, and to the Secretariat of IAAPI, Mr. Anil, for a very smooth interaction and for his smooth dealing with IAAPI so far. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you more proactively and with a lot of vigor and enthusiasm. So I will stop here, Mr. Anuj, and hand over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zutshi, for bringing in the ray of hope and also lighting the path from transcending from amusement industry to the tourism industry. Now, I'd like to take in the questions which have flown in from various guests. So the first question is, amusement and theme park are offering services to increase domestic tourism. How can we get industry status?
Well,
For Mr. Ajay.
this getting the industry status has two aspects. One is the industry status at the state level. Now, I have always been pitching for seeking industry status in the state level first, in the sense that the three important things that you are going to gain, one is the electricity charges, which I think for amusement parks is very important. Even for water parks, water charges are also very important. So there have been states where they have been given the industry status. The moment it is given industry status, the electricity and the water tariffs will be charged as per industry rate and not by the commercial rate. So first is this. So again, I would say we must pitch in for with the state governments to get industry status. Number two, at the government of India level, I would say that we have been trying, even when I was Secretary Tourism, we tried for three things. We wanted to get export status for the tourism industry, we wanted to get industry status for the tourism industry, and we wanted to get the infra status for the entire hospitality industry. Now, that movement is still on. In various forums, these issues are being raised. Let us put our energy more and more. A time may come when we will get some success in getting the industry status or export status or infra status, whatever, in Government of India. But I will say that we should put more energy into getting, because state government, it is easier to get, and you will get an immediate economical benefit. In getting industry status in Government of India, you will not get the electricity tariff, rebate. But if you become industry in a state, you will get the. So that answers the question. Thank you.
The next question I'll take in from Mr. Sohan. His question is based on a suggestion only on the F&B and restaurant services shall be started for sit-in and eat, or it should be only takeaway.
Let me tell you, I would, this is my personal, not just from the guidelines or the experiences. I have been telling the hotel industry also all these 2, 3, 4 months in various webinars that in Goa also I mentioned that you stand a very good chance. You have open air beach restaurants. Now, number one, indoor versus open is preferred. Number two, follow the guidelines strictly. The takeaways will not be, you cannot afford to have ticketing and somebody going to the staffer and reacting with him. That will need a lot of movement. The idea should be that you enter with least interaction, and even you don't have to open the door should open automatically, and you come and sit on the seat which has been mentioned. no hanging around of waiters around you, and whatever way of serving you want to follow, it should be minimal. The service should be done on the table, and the person should be well clad with PPE, mask, and the shield and everything. So first is takeaways should be avoided. Even in that services and takeaways, no, I mean if you take takeaway is absolutely fine. Of course, I so takeaway from restaurant is still happening. Today also the Zomatos are working. Today the Swiggies are working. They are delivering at home. Now, if you are standing next to the restaurant, outside the restaurant, and making an order and taking it away, there is no problem in that. But the thing is, if you want to make them sit in the restaurant, I meant that the delivery should be done in the at the table, and not you should not go and pick up the food from the counter. That should not happen. So open air restaurants, the seating pattern as suggested by government, I think should be followed. And as I had mentioned initially, and probably you also mean the same, when F&B can start, hotels, the restaurants can start all over. Why can't your restaurant start within the park also? And you open the park only for restaurant, and people may start coming in, but you have to take permission from the government.
Next question I'll take in from KK Hamza. Any chance to cancel GST for next 1 year? Then we can reduce entry fee to attract people.
Uh, I am an optimist, but I'm afraid. You see, if you see the GST payment, government extended initially for 3 months, then it was extended up to 30th June. But as you know, 30th June, beyond that, they did not extend the deadline. Now, if the government of India was resistant to or hesitant to extend the deadline of GST payments beyond 30th June, the question of totally waiving of GST, I don't see any reason, because if they do it in one industry, they will have to do pan India for all the sectors, and other sectors are much more rewarding to them economically, because all said and done, government also needs money. But one thing that we can always work for, an deferment of GST further for some period can be done. But unfortunately, there has not been much of pressure on the government for further deferment, and we are straight away mentioning about waiver. So I think we must pitch in for reduction of GST at a later stage, which is also one of the questions and forms in the charter also, rather than getting it waived totally. But once the COVID stops, I have a feeling that the government will come with some more incentive to boost the economy. You may have heard some meetings happening in the cabinet day before yesterday. Also, there was a meeting how to boost the economy. So I have a feeling that today the government is fraught with this bigger problem, and they do not know how much money they may have to pull in and spend on the health sector. But once we are free from this, I think in the new normal or in the post-COVID era, the industry with an amusement tourism industry should pitch in again with bigger drive, and to see how the backlog losses can be compensated. And I'm not losing hope also, because there is a national tourism task force before us. It has not completed its proceedings. So I would say that we must put these issues before the national tourism task force. They may not be in a hurry immediately to come out with something, because you need finances to provide some benefits. So let us put this before the task force and see how we can aggressively pursue this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chiunda. The next question I'll take from Mr. Jadeja. How can we get letter from Home Ministry to debracket amusement industry from cinemas and entertainment?
Well, this is a very good idea. In fact, I started with this, that unfortunately, whenever amusement parks, amusement industry is linked with entertainment industry, because at times you say amusement and entertainment. So let us stop using this for entertainment. Even internationally, they use it as attraction. It's amusement, theme parks, water parks, and attraction industry. Now, entertainment, the moment entertainment comes, you get clubbed with the cinema. So we must make a point as I mentioned, in order to reopen faster before 31st July, IAPI must send a proposal to the Home Ministry, to the Health Ministry, and to the Ministry of Tourism, even separately, to pitch in for this. Ki, sir, we are not part of entertainment. We are not closeting the people inside the cinema hall for 3.5 hours. We are an open area. It's like a restaurant working. It's like a merchandising happening. It's like some game which is again keeping social distancing. And please de-link, even if it is not de-linked, we don't wish that cinemas should not open for all times to come. Idea is basically that you should try to detach yourself and pitch in positively that in the next phase of unlocking, you must take amusement parks. And even if you're going to close cinemas, don't compare it with us. When malls can open, why can't the open area amusement open, whereas the malls are all closed? So we must make it a case. Let us work out a proposal, prepare a draft. I can also put my opinion on the draft, and we can finalize and send it to the ministries.
Thank you, Mr. Zutshi. I think most of the office bearers and board of directors are present and listening to you today, and I hope they will take appropriate action to.
I just intervened. There are two questions, I think, which were mentioned about the FDI in tourism policy.
No, I'm taking further questions. So I'm just
All right.
advising, the board of directors are present, so probably they'll take care of the suggestions which you have given in right now about delinking with the entertainment industry and cinema halls. So I will take in the next question. To attract FDI in tourism sector, what is the policy?
Sorry, come again.
To attract in FDI in tourism sector,
Oh,
what is
right.
policy?
So, yeah. You see, FDI is, we have 100% FDI in tourism presently, and we have been propagating this point even when I was Secretary Tourism all over the world, international events. Now, fortunately, this automatic route 100% FDI is available to the recreational facility also, which means amusement parks, water parks, and all such parks under your IAAPI, they are eligible for 100% FDI. And subject to confirmation, I have also been told that there is a 5-year tax holiday for resorts, on these 100% FDI. So you are covered under 100% FDI, and you must take advantage of this policy of the government and the Ministry of Finance to get investments from outside in whichever way you think fit.
Uh, Thank you. I'll take in the next question from Mr. Goenka. How can manufacturers benefit from the projects in Ministry of Tourism and Urban Development and municipal corporations while Make in India and Atmanirbhar are our hope? We are not seeing the impact of the same in tender rules and policies.
Uh, well, this is a larger area. I think the the market, the GEM market, the platform which has been placed, I think that offers opportunities to all. And the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign has just begun. Let us see what policy changes are brought in. There have been some interventions, some changes which has been brought about under this Atmanirbhar Bharat, mainly for other industries and other sectors. For tourism, yes, they have not come out with neither with any stimulus package directly, but then through MSMEs, through moratorium, they have certainly helped. As far as the machinery production is concerned, I think we can actually pitch in. And I again remind you about the viability gap funding, wherein the Ministry of Tourism, as I mentioned, up to a project of 200 crores under PPP, 25% subsidy up to 50 crores can be given, provided the process is followed, that state and the private sector they combine and move the proposal to the government of India. So this is applicable, this VGF, to amusement parks and to the theme parks also. And this can be moved with the ministry to the Ministry of Tourism. As far as specific incentives for machinery production within the country for amusement equipments, I think I have noted this point. Maybe at some point of time, I'll be able to answer this question.
Thank you. So the next question I'll take in. How can indoor amusement centers promote itself for tourism in a tier 1 or 2 city?
Well, I think indoor amusement parks, our centers are more accessible to the people, uh, and that number is gradually increasing as the malls are increasing. The IACs are also increasing. During COVID, we should keep in abeyance, we should keep it low. We cannot take up ISC at this moment. But then the ISCs will be a bigger hit for two, three reasons. One is, again, as I said, you are linking the amusement with other destination. In mall, you go to see cinema, in mall, you go to shopping and other things, and then simultaneously the children can enjoy the IAC. In standalone IACs also, if you are thinking of having a standalone IAC, like in some parts, you find that there is a sports center or something for people, for children. Now that can also come in the middle of the city. A big amusement open park has to in in the far flung area, maybe 2 kilometers, 10 kilometers, wherever you have area. But an ISC with a smaller area, standalone also, can be a better, will be having more footfall than the maybe the far distant one, and people can make use of these ISCs. So I'm all with you. I think wait for the COVID to end, and then ISCs should be replicated in more and more malls. Even if the malls are not coming up, in fact, in tier one and tier two cities, other in tier three cities, also I would say that there is a chance people enjoy games. The youngsters, whether they are from rural, whether semi-rural, semi-urban, they will all patronize the theme park. They would love to go there. So in ISCs will be a smaller investment in smaller cities, and I think they can be a big hit. I remember if in a small city, I have been collector of various districts which are very small. Dholpur is just about less than a lakh at that time. Hanumangarh, I was SDM. So anything new, a new cinema hall or a new park, a new restaurant comes up, and it's a news, in the local media, amusement. So I would pitch in for, instead of catering only to the metros, not from COVID angle, as a long term, we must go into the next tier cities. Even the aviation is improving, the Udan scheme is also catering, the railway connections are increasing, the transport and the roads are becoming, infrastructure is better. So I think it's time that we must cater to the next level cities also in the form of IACs, and also in terms of amusement park, but that will need a lot of investment. You may not get so much of footfall in a smaller place. So smaller IACs, I think, will be better.
So the next question I'll take in from Mr. Nirav Pandya. Should Arogya Setu app made compulsory to visit parks?
Well, presently, the government has put in this condition that every time, whether it is an airport, whether it is railway station, whether it is a hotel, you have to be checked with a thermal scanner, and then you will be checked up. Even in airlines, you will be checked up with. Now, Arogya Setu, of course, will be a very tough task. It's easy to manage in airlines and but then, as long as the government instructions are there, you have to follow. Because let's not forget one thing. You see, in government, we all follow the rules and regulations. Ministry of Health has given some guidelines. The person sitting at the gate will keep that guideline in front of him, like a checklist 1, 2, 3, 4. And the moment you find that it is not done, then another thing which is very important for you when you recover and reopen is that suppose you check a person in the thermal screen and you find him having some fever and he's a doubtful person. You must have a policy as to what you will do, because he is already ticketed and online he is bought. So you must have a scheme for refund, so that you don't have the angry consumers going back. So that also policy you need to. But yes, if Arogya Setu is a necessity, you may have to follow, and you can't seek exemption at this stage. It's just a matter of month or two, and I think things will ease.
Thank you, sir. Looking at the time limitations, I'll just take in the last question now. This is a question from Tariq Zaman. He says, my water park was on the verge of inauguration. Now converting it into an open-air restaurant would be beneficial, or will it succeed in ways of my by the time COVID ends?
Sorry, Mr. Anuj, your voice was cracking. Can you just repeat the question again? Sorry.
The question is from Mr. Tariq Zaman. My water park was on the verge of inauguration. Now converting it into an open-air restaurant, would it be beneficial or will it subside the craze of my park by the time COVID ends?
See, water park is a big attraction, and I would say that in India, water park hold a very distinct. It has a USP of your park, and not too many parks have water parks. So if you have laid the infrastructure, see, starting a restaurant on a large scale, occupying the water park area will not be a good idea. You have already invested. Again, you'll have to reinvest to convert into a restaurant. If you have space elsewhere, you can start with a small restaurant, but don't dismantle your water park because ultimately everything is going to be normal. Let me say. So don't hurry, don't be impatient, don't waste your infrastructure and only hoping that water parks are not good because water parks are a bigger hit than the rides these days. So you should retain what you have.
I'll extend with one more question, which is quite important for indoor amusement centers. How can indoor amusement center take the benefit from various tourism-related schemes by Government of India?
Well, I have mentioned the only scheme that I foresee, although in the viability gap funding, nobody has mentioned whether it should be open air or whether it should be indoor. So ISCs can also benefit from the viability gap funding. The only thing is that it has to be a public-private partnership. Other than this, there is nothing in terms of financial terms where you can get the benefit, except for the benefits of GSTs and other things and taxation. That is also not part of Ministry of Tourism's policy. Ministry of Tourism always depends on other ministries because it has nothing to offer from its own side, except for the infrastructure, except for the publicity. But yes, amusement industry should also pitch in before the Ministry of Tourism. This is my additional point to take up the campaign on amusement sector in India. I have not, during my time also, we did not prepare a single creative in which we highlighted the amusement industry or people should come. We have been campaigning for World Heritage sites, we have been doing for hotels, and we are doing for all other sectors, but amusement has never been. So we must bring it in the media plan of Ministry of Tourism also. This is where the ministry can help us to a very large extent.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, before I request Mr. Rajiv Chalnapurkar, Vice Chairman IAAPI, to give a vote of thanks to you, I'd like to mention here that my chat box is full of thanks message and thanks for useful session, thanks for very useful information. Special thanks to Mr. Zutshi. So there are a lot many messages. So I'll probably share in the chat with you at a later stage. Now, may I request Mr. Rajiv Chalnapurkar to give a vote of thanks to Mr. Zutshi for the insightful and information given. Over to Mr. Rajiv Chalnapurkar, please.
Yeah. Mr. Zutshi, Board of Directors of IAAPI and members. It was such an informative session. And Mr. Zutshi, not only we as a board, but the entire members were looking forward to hear from you. And Mr. Anuj just now mentioned that they all were so happy. I would like to mention two things, sir. That one, that IAAPI has taken a lot of efforts with guidance from some doctors and the scientists, and created a detailed standard operating procedure in all verticals of the IAAPI activities. And we will certainly share it with you. You had given a lot of suggestions as far as pursuing right from district to state to the central government. As on today, sir, as an association, we tried our level best at all the levels to communicate. But we were looking a guardian like you. And I must thank the board to approve our request to have you as our mentor and a guide. We are more than sure, and I feel so happy of your encouragement to suggest us that you will handhold us to take the industry to the next level. Last but not the least, sir, this industry has lot of verticals, as our one of the colleagues, Director Mr. Srikant suggested, that we too have a large portion of our manufacturers who manufactures for domestic and exports all around the world between the water park equipments, the rides and attractions. We all will require guidance to make sure that the government will able to support this industry as Made in India initiative. And believe me, sir, there are manufacturers who has been doing for a couple of decades to at least more than few dozens of countries all around the world. So I feel so proud that it is not only for domestic need, but we are also exporting. It is not been noticed by the government as on today. And with your guidance and help, I'm more than confident that we will take it to the next level, sir. So thank you so much on behalf of entire industry. And we are glad to have you as our mentor and the guide for the future. Thank you so much, sir. Anuj.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. Thank you, Vinod Zutshi ji. Thanks for sharing in insightful knowledge. Getting back to the next session, upcoming session. Friends, on session on mastering mechanical maintenance, we have done a session on this before. We're repeating this session again from a different person and a different perspective. Mr. Shashikant Dunga, Senior Manager Engineering, Moves of Wonder Entertainment, will be taking the session. The session moderated by Mr. Pradeep Sharma on 27th July 2020 at 4 p.m. Would request everybody to join in. And it is solely because of your interest and participation that the webinar series has continued to attract such high numbers, has become a useful platform where ideas, knowledge, and experience are being shared. See you virtually. Stay safe. Thank you. Please visit, follow, like, and subscribe to IAAPI YouTube channel, which link is given below. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being a participant with us today. Thank you.